Otto Warburg, and Himalayan Qigong. Episode 1. The Man and the Flame. Hello. Today, I want to tell you a story. A story about a flame. A tiny flame. But more important than anything else in the world, that flame is burning inside you. Right now. No, I'm not joking. And this isn't a metaphor. I'm talking about a real flame. A biological flame. Burning in every cell of your body. You have 37 trillion cells in your body. And inside each cell, there's a tiny power plant called the mitochondria. Inside it, a flame is burning. The flame of life. When that flame burns bright, you're full of energy. When it grows weak, you feel tired. When it dies out, life ends. And there was a man, a German scientist, who spent nearly half his life studying this flame. His name, Otto Warburg. The story begins in Berlin. Let's go back to Berlin. Winter of 1923. Snow falling outside the window. Inside the laboratory, a 40-year-old man is bent over a microscope. White coat, test tube in hand, eyes fixed on a tiny tissue sample. That's Otto Warburg, and he just saw something that made him check 3 times. A number. The number 70. The cancer tissue in front of him was consuming sugar 70 times more than normal liver tissue. 70 times. This couldn't be an error. This was a mystery. A big mystery. And Warburg would spend the next 40 years of his life solving it. Who is Otto Warburg? But first, who is Otto Warburg? This wasn't just any scientist. This was an extraordinary human being. Born in 1883, in a Jewish intellectual family in Germany. His father was a famous physicist. He grew up among books and scientific debates. 2 doctoral degrees, one in chemistry, one in medicine. Already outstanding. But for Warburg, that was just the beginning. And then there's something that made him even more legendary. A letter. March of 1918, World War I. Warburg was at the front, a cavalry officer, riding his horse through gunfire. And Albert Einstein, see Soph. Yes, Albert Einstein himself wrote him a letter. Dear Warburg, please leave the battlefield. You are too valuable to science. You hear that? Einstein, who had just published the theory of relativity, was begging Warburg to leave the battlefield because science needed him. Warburg listened. He returned to Berlin, and that decision changed the history of medicine. But the story gets even stranger. In 1933, Hitler came to power. End quote. Warburg, a man of Jewish descent, should have fled. Thousands of Jewish scientists left the country. But Warburg, he stayed, right in the middle of Berlin, continued his research, and miraculously, he survived both the Nazi era and World War II. Why? No one knows for sure. Rumor has it that Hitler feared cancer. His mother died from it, and Hitler believed that Warburg could find a cure. Perhaps that's why Warburg was protected. The truth that we don't know. But the result was, Warburg lived to 87, died in 1970, leaving behind a massive scientific legacy. And among it was a discovery that bears his name, the Warburg Effect, the shocking discovery. Now let's go back to the laboratory in 1923. Warburg was wondering, do cancer cells breathe differently than normal cells? Sounds strange, doesn't it? Cells breathing? But yes. Cells need oxygen. They breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide, just like us, only on a much smaller scale. So what did Warburg do? He took different types of tissue, normal liver, normal kidney, normal heart, and cancer tissue. He measured 3 things. 1. How much oxygen they consumed. 2. How much sugar they ate. 3. How much lactic acid they produced. And the result? Shocking. Cancer tissue consumed sugar 70 times more. 70 times. And produced lactic acid 70 times more. But here's the strange part. Cancer tissue produced lactic acid, even when there was plenty of oxygen. For you to understand why this is strange, I need to explain a bit about biology. Normally, when cells have enough oxygen, they use oxygen to burn sugar, creating energy. This method is efficient, like a modern power plant. But when oxygen is lacking, cells must ferment sugar, producing lactic acid. This method is inefficient, like burning coal in an old furnace. According to Louis Pasteur's theory, LAKR, the great French scientist, cells only ferment when lacking oxygen. When oxygen is available, they must breathe with oxygen. But cancer cells, they break the rules. They ferment even when there's plenty of oxygen. Warburg called this aerobic glycolysis. Sounds contradictory, doesn't it? But that's exactly what's happening. And Warburg wondered, why? The bold hypothesis. Warburg proposed a hypothesis, a bold hypothesis, a hypothesis that would spark debate for nearly a century. He said, cancer originates from damaged cellular respiration. He reasoned like this. Step 1. Normal cells breathe with oxygen in the mitochondria, the cell's power plant. Efficient, produces lots of energy. Step 2. If the mitochondria are damaged due to prolonged oxygen deprivation, toxins, or any reason, the cell loses its ability to breathe normally. Step 3. To survive, the cell must switch to fermentation. Inefficient, but at least it allows the cell to live. Step 4. Once the cell has switched to fermentation, it can't go back. And this is the first step toward cancer. The cell starts dividing uncontrollably. A tumor forms. In other words, cancer isn't caused by gene mutations, but by damaged mitochondria, by lack of oxygen. This was a big claim, a claim that would shake the medical world. And in 1931, Warburg was awarded the Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prize and the mission. 1931, Stockholm, Sweden. Warburg stood on stage receiving the Nobel Prize in medicine, not for his cancer hypothesis, enzymes, not yet, but for his work on respiratory enzymes. He had proven how cells use oxygen to create energy. But in his heart, Warburg had a bigger mission. He wanted to prove cancer can be prevented by keeping cells supplied with enough oxygen, and he lived by that philosophy. Warburg was obsessed with cancer. He feared this disease. So, he lived extremely disciplined, grew his own clean vegetables in the garden, drew water from an unpolluted well, made bread from untreated wheat, avoided all toxins that could harm mitochondria. He believed 80% of cancers could be avoided if we keep mitochondria healthy, if we ensure cells always have enough oxygen. And he spent the next 40 years researching this. In 1966, he stood before a conference of Nobel laureates in Germany. His final lecture, The Primary Cause and Prevention of Cancer, he affirmed, keep cells supplied with oxygen, eat natural foods, avoid toxins. That's how to prevent cancer. 4 years later, in 1970, he passed away, lived to 87. And the question remained, was he right or wrong? The Warburg Effect today. Now let's fast forward to the 21st century. Warburg has been gone for over 50 years. What about his hypothesis? Here's the interesting thing. Modern science says Warburg was partly right and partly wrong. What he got right. 1. The Warburg effect is real. Cancer cells truly consume a lot of sugar. Modern research confirms this. 2. This is very important. It's the foundation of PET scans, the modern cancer detection tool. Every year, millions of PET scans are performed worldwide, and all are based on Warburg's discovery. 3. Oxygen is truly crucial for cellular health. When oxygen is lacking, cells weaken to become vulnerable to damage. This is completely true. 4. Since 2005, research on the Warburg effect has exploded. Scientists realized abnormal energy metabolism truly plays a role in cancer. Many new drugs are being developed based on this idea. So where was Warburg wrong? The main point: cancer cell mitochondria are not damaged. This is what Warburg misunderstood. With modern technology, we can look into cancer cell mitochondria, and they function normally. In fact, many cancer cells need well-functioning mitochondria to survive. They don't just ferment, they also breathe with oxygen. They do both. So why do they still ferment despite having oxygen? Not because mitochondria are damaged, but for another reason: gene mutations. Modern science has determined cancer originates from mutations in critical genes. When these genes mutate, cells lose control. They multiply endlessly. And these gene mutations alter how cells metabolize energy, making them prefer fermentation. So the Warburg effect isn't the cause of cancer. It's the result of gene mutations. Warburg was wrong about the mechanism, but he was right about the principle. And here's the most important lesson Warburg left behind. Cells need oxygen to stay healthy. When cells are well nourished with oxygen, good nutrition, in marcoxins, they function well. When the environment is poor, cells weaken to become susceptible to disease. And this is where the story meets Himalayan Qigong, the snow mountains and the laboratory. Now let's leave Berlin. Let's go somewhere else. Somewhere more remote, colder, and much more ancient. The Himalayas, snow mountains, between Nepal and Tibet. Thousands of years ago, before Warburg was born, and before science had microscopes, there were people hidden in these mountains. Monks, masters. They had no laboratories, no equipment, only their bodies and their breath. And they discovered something. There is an energy flow, invisible but real, THIS, flowing through the air into the body, nourishing every cell. They called it vital energy. When vital energy is abundant, the body is healthy. When vital energy is lacking, the body weakens. Disease appears. And the best way to bring vital energy into the body? Deep breathing. Do you see something strange here? Warburg in Berlin said, cells need oxygen. The Himalayan masters said, the body needs vital energy. Two different places, two different languages, but the same truth. And this is what I'll tell you about in the next episode. End of episode 1. So that's the end of episode 1. We've met Otto Warburg, the man who spent his life understanding the flame within cells. We've seen his discovery, the Warburg Effect, cancer cells consuming sugar like crazy. We've learned where he was right, where he was wrong, and the lesson he left behind. But the story isn't over. In episode 2, we'll explore, is vital energy really oxygen? What does modern science say about deep breathing? And why does the 1,000-year-old method from the Himalayas perfectly align with Warburg's research? See you again in episode 2. And remember, every time you breathe, you're nourishing 37 trillion tiny flames in your body. Breathe deeper. The flames are waiting. See you soon. End of episode 1.